Welcome to the Culinary Treasure Podcast. I'm Stephen Shomler, your host. Today, I'm so excited. We get to hear the story of a Portland coffee legend, a legendary company. Mark Stell, you are one of the co-founders, the CEO. Just in the few times I've been around Mark, I think he's a humble man. He doesn't brag very much. He just kind of goes about his business and does what he does. But really, you are 25 years. You're celebrating your 25-year anniversary. Does that kind of blow your mind?
It makes me feel old.
Well, hats off to you, because that's a long time to succeed. Portland is one of the places that people think of in the coffee world as being amazing for a long, long time. Not everybody knows that. The average person doesn't necessarily realize that Portland is really high up the food chain for cool coffee places in the United States, but it is. And for you to succeed in that kind of environment for 25 years, I think that's incredibly impressive. Anyway, so I'm delighted to get to tell your story. Questions I ask everybody on all my podcasts. Where were you born?
I was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
And where'd you go to high school?
St. Lawrence Seminary. It's up in northern Wisconsin. It was a boarding school.
Boarding school, northern Wisconsin. It gets cold up there.
It does. That's why I moved to Oregon.
Okay, and then we're telling your coffee story. We're not necessarily telling your whole story, but one interesting thing is after high school, and what was the mascot, by the way, at St. Lawrence Seminary?
The Hilltoppers.
The Hilltoppers. And if I understand correctly, after your time there, you spent a couple years in Dayton, University of Dayton in Ohio.
That's correct.
So the Flyers were there. I only know that because of the NCAA tournament.
That's right.
And then you ended up for a little while at the Stardust Casino in Vegas, which I only know about because they're gone now, but they have really cool logos and memorabilia that people still want to this day.
Yeah, I worked there when Bobby Barasini and the Orangutan Act was the big deal. And it was a short stint in Las Vegas before I moved to Portland.
And then 1990, you moved to Portland to be near family.
Correct, yeah.
And you went back to school at Portland State, going to finish this thing up. And you joined a really cool acronym organization that kind of was life-changing for you.
Yeah, so when I went to Portland State, I wanted to become active in some student organization. I saw somebody came into my class and told me about this student group called ISEC, and they're not actually in existence at Portland State at the moment, but they still are the world's largest student group. And this focuses that essentially you help raise traineeships from all over the world to come to Portland and work, and it's basically a global exchange of ideas. And I love that idea. So I was in charge of marketing and sales, and I got to go out and meet all these corporate executives and try to sell them on a student coming from somewhere else. So, for example, Arthur Anderson, they used to bring in interns from Japan because they were really trying to break into the Japanese business market in Portland. And if they had a CPA from Japan, it would make them look great. And so it was a really great organization. And one of the things that really I took away from this as a student, but also as something that propelled me into the business community was in 1992, while going to Portland State, there was an opportunity to go to Rio de Janeiro for the Earth Summit in 1992. And I jumped at this chance. It was one of two students to attend, and it was life-changing for me. It really propelled me into this business.
Yeah, so you're one of two students from the United States, representing the United States at this big summit where, like, world leaders were at. This is like a big deal. I'm right?
Yes. I mean, I was in a room with Fidel Castro, Ryan Mulrooney, he was the Prime Minister of Canada. We had Al Gore was there. We had pretty much any leader in this hemisphere was in a room with me at one point, and it was quite overwhelming, to be honest. Didn't get to say much, but at the end of the day, we were considered the youth voice of the world, and to me that was something that I didn't take lightly, and we prepared for these meetings, and we came out of it with just so much excitement about the future.
And you got exposed to a lot of different backgrounds and entities and different facets of life, but lots of different types of businesses. And you got exposure to the coffee business as well.
That's right. So Brazil is the largest producer of coffee in the world. They've been for a long time. They produce over 35% of all the world coffee. If something goes bad in Brazil, the world coffee suffers from it because they just control so much of the pricing volume. So I had, during the summit, I got to take a break and go out and see some of the coffee areas and really fell in love with the business. I didn't actually like coffee at the time. I drank coffee, but it was usually bad coffee. And so when I went into some of these growers that were growing specialty grade coffees, it just opened my eyes up. And then in addition to that, it was how big and broad, and I could do anything in the coffee business. And I still tell people that if you want to go into the coffee business, you can pretty much get into any facet of it: growing, export, import, packaging, roasting, retail. There's so much to it. And that's what excited me about it. And I saw at the Rear Summit, there's this challenge for individuals that were participating is to go back and influence the business you're about to get into. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back and look at coffee and come back and try to figure out how to influence my industry in some way.
And I suspect that the specialty coffee tasted a lot better to your palate than the bad coffee you'd had before.
Yeah, I mean, it's night and day. So when you have an Arabica coffee versus a Robusta coffee, it is really night and day. One is good, one is not very good.
And those are two different plants, basically, yes?
Two different species of coffee, yes.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I would see these commercials and they'd say Arabica, and I just was very young, I'd think, is it like a rabbit or what? I had no idea it was a different plant. And so, yeah, those are two different types of beans, two different plants.
Right, and then within the species of Arabica, there's just so many different varieties of coffees that taste different. And, as a lot of people that try coffee, they're like, oh, this tastes like coffee. But when you're into coffee and you taste coffee all day long, you understand that this one bean could be really expensive, or you could, if you brought this back, your customers would love it if you got a great price at it. And that's really the nuances of different coffee roasters can buy different coffees and roast them certain ways. And we tend to do a lot of everything. So.
Yeah, and the type of roast you put on it also has an influence on the taste.
Right, and I personally have never been a fan of really dark roast coffee. So even our dark roast coffee is fairly light, considering. I mean, it's like a medium dark. It's not really full on French roast, but that's as dark as we want to roast. And other companies will really actually over roast it, and that's how their signature is.
Well, and part of the benefit, tell me if I'm not mistaken, I do know that subtle difference. Part of the benefit, if there is one, of over roasting beans is it's to me, the analogy I heard once, so it's like making toast. If you toast sourdough, it tastes a little different than toasting rye or toasting an English muffin or toasting banana bread. But if you toast all of those till they're burnt, they all taste the same.
Right.
And if you over roast your beans and burn them, the coffee tastes the same regardless of the bean.
Correct. You're not getting the individual flavor of each coffees you're buying from specific origin. The only really reason you do it is you're buying low quality coffee to mask that. And so you're tasting more of a roast than you are of actual coffee. So you find coffee roasters that are buying these, amazing coffees and they're roasting a medium to light roast. That's pretty standard for somebody that's buying really high quality coffee. And if you like that, you can maybe go a little bit medium dark, but it's just at that point it's changing from what you should be tasting in coffee quality to that roast level.
So, and when you were in Brazil, you spent some time Rio, and you got to go out to coffee farms.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really enjoy about this business is finding and sourcing great coffee and finding great suppliers. And in Rio, that's not even close to coffee. So you got to get out into Salinas and other areas, probably a good 8-hour by drive or a good flight, a couple-hour flight. And, we happened to stumble on a couple of small coffee growers that we were just out on a week-long trip to get away from the summit. We were there for almost 2 months, and the summit was about a week, but we were there for a while writing some dissertation afterwards. But we stumbled on some farmers. They took us in. They told us all about their business and how they're importing or exporting it with an exporter, and we just saw a whole side of it. There was quite a bit of still manual picking at the time. They hadn't really got into this big harvesting machines like they do now, but it was just exciting to see. It was just so much labor involved in coffee, and then you hear the hardships of how much money they were getting per pound, and how they were trying to raise their prices through quality and that kind of thing. And what excited me the most was really looking at a farmer and saying, "Well, your coffee is really good. I've never had this good a coffee before." And I came from Portland and never really understood it. I didn't really look at the industry that way. I looked at it as Starbucks was just starting out. Coffee people in Portland was around and they were doing quite well. They were kind of the big regional player back in the day. And anyway, it was just some that just fascinated me, that what I'm drinking is an agricultural product, and you don't really think about it. You just think, you think it's a commodity and it just shows up at your grocery store, but it has people behind it and they pick coffee every day.
So for you kind of just fell in love with the idea of coffee as a business and coffee as people development.
Yeah. So when I came back from Portland, I worked for a coffee roaster for a period of time, kind of learned everything, started a small boutique roaster retailer in Northwest 23rd called Abruzzi Coffee Roasters with my wife. Actually, at the time, was my girlfriend. Her dad wanted to kill me. But
so you come back from Brazil and you work for about 9 months for a roaster, and then you open your small little retail outlet.
Yep. It was just basically about 300 square feet, in a clothing store on Northwest 23rd. I had a roaster, 10 seats at the bar, and I had a little 5-pound coffee roaster, and I would do small batches. People would come in, and I could do a signature blend for them and deliver it to their house at the end of the day. It was way ahead of, honestly, it was kind of crazy. I think I made $1 an hour back then because I was roast their coffee. It'd take me a half hour, and then it was like 1 pound, and then I would bag it. And at the end of the night, after doing a 10-hour, 12-hour shift, I'd take it and drop it off at their doorstep. And I made no money, but it was an amazing experience because I got to cup coffee every day, and I really kind of dove into the specialty side that I really wanted to understand more after leaving this company that I worked for a while.
So that was kind of like almost a 3-year master's program in coffee while running your own business.
Yeah, it told me that, when you start up in any small business, you have to understand the numbers, right? So how much does it cost if I wasn't doing this? Can I make money at it? And to me, you can't do it that way. There's no way to do it anymore. Your minimum wage here is almost $15 an hour now. And if you're roasting a half a pound or a pound of coffee in 30 minutes, it's quite expensive per pound. The labor is going to kill you. So you have to do it at scale. But back in 1992, I just wanted to learn everything as much as I could and not, get killed financially. And it helped me do that. I had a couple carts in other locations, and I could do a little volume. I did a little bit of wholesale distribution, very tiny a bit, and really just focused on trying to survive and do a nice neighborhood business. And at the end of the day, I think I learned everything about how to do retail and as well as how to start wholesale again.
That's amazing. And then in 1996, you closed that company up, and then you started Portland Coffee Roasters, 1996.
Yeah. So my good friend that started the business with me, he was also a friend from school. He was also in the coffee business, and we decided to open up Portland Coffee Roasters together, and he was doing sales and service, and I was roasting and packaging and supply chain management, that kind of thing. Back then, there really wasn't much of it. You'd order a pallet that lasts you a month, and it wasn't a really difficult thing to do. But even from the first day, we had relationships with growers. Our first grower was from Costa Rica, and literally 25 years later, I still buy from the same person. We've done tons of projects together, and that kind of direct connection was one of my real goals. Was by the time I thought in a few years, I really want to buy everything I can direct. Nobody was doing it. I wanted to celebrate that story of this particular grower grows this type of coffee, has this amazing farm. We've partnered together on a daycare, and you can help by purchasing our coffee because we're going to do it anyway, but we want you to participate and see this growth of this farm. And for 25 years, they've been doing an amazing job. So that's kind of started the whole direct trade movement. We were kind of early on a developer of this.
Yeah, you're a pioneer in a lot of ways. I do the another podcast I have is do the craft beer podcast, and I just have real heart for smaller independent businesses. I'm not big on multinational companies when it comes to food kind of things. I just think someone local, I don't care if you do millions and millions of dollars in volume, but a family owns it and they kind of do it and they kind of care about it. And so it's not necessarily the size of the company that matters to me, but kind of ownership matters to me. And to me, a craft brewer, that gets bought by a multinational corporation, in my head, they're out of the craft brewery. I won't drink them anymore. I just kind of put them out. I don't want to promote them. That's just kind of where I draw the boundary. Not everybody does. But when I think about the companies, like you're a pioneer, there's not a lot of still locally owned, locally around businesses when you started. I was trying to think of them. Boyd's was around for a long time. They're gone now, which is kind of sad. Longbottom is still around. But from the time that you started, companies that were around when you started, there's not many left.
Not many of the same ownership groups are left. You'd think. I know there's a few that I can't think of, but they're very few locally owned anymore. There's a lot smaller companies out now than they were when I first started. I think when I started there was about 10 or 12 coffee roasters, and everybody thought you're crazy. They're so competitive. Portland's the most saturated coffee market in the country. I think there's like 80 now in the market. So there's so many really small roasters, and they all do a good job. Don't get me wrong; they do a great. Most of them do a really good job. They're servicing their local neighborhood or market. it's just really tough for these guys to grow. And we were lucky. We started when we did. We had great programs, and we really accelerated what I thought was what was lacking in coffee at the time was a really sustainably focused supply chain company that not only wanted to do good, but we thought it was great for our bottom line in the long run. And it has really paid off. I mean, I'll be honest, when there was a time when the market hit like some crazy number of like, coffee prices were at an all-time high of like 100-year high. And I had some of my growers saying, you've been supporting me for over X years, and we're going to take a hit. We could just sell out and make so much more money, but we value you as a company. And they literally gave us a discount because the market dictates every price every year. And it just taught me that we're doing something right here. When you have some of your growers who, in some of these countries, it's some of the poorest countries in the world, they literally went out of their way to make sure we were taken care of. And that's the kind of thing that you don't always see in business. Even when you grow, you run that risk of something in your supply chain shifting because somebody's just offering them a little more money. And we've always been engaged. We want to be part of their business, and we want them a part of ours and sell that story.
And early on, one of the things that when you started Portland Coffee Roast in '96 is it was kind of you were going to have a focus, which you did for many years, on wholesale. So early on, one of the cool things that kind of helped you keep going as a company, there was a company that did coffee to offices. And so you got that contract. You provide them coffee. They took it to offices. Then you had a lot of little cafes that would pick up your stuff wholesale. There's still one to this day that's still with you to this day that was an early customer of yours, early wholesale customer.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing that you value. You don't maybe tell them every year, but, hopefully our customer service team is doing a good job doing that. But, there's a little Northwest 24th and Quimby Stepping Stone Cafe. If you ever go in there, you'll know their slogan. It's awesome. It's like you eat here because we let you. I think that's their slogan. And it just typifies like the essence of Portland in a way. They have such a great breakfast there. And anyway, it's just a cool Portland iconic place. And literally, I think before, I remember going in there trying to sell the old owner. This is 24 years ago, I think, is roughly around there. And he's like, I'm not going to switch. I've been with Boyd's Coffee for over 50 years. And I was like, I'd love your business, but that's such great loyalty. And then all of a sudden he called me up like a couple weeks later and said, you know what, I'll give you a try. And they've been with us ever since. I mean, but it's those places that, they do such an amazing job. I hope we're doing a great job for them. And it's really a great, I think, long-term success story or a good story about how they've been loyal to us, and we've hopefully done a great job for them.
Well, I think we visited a little bit before we recorded, and I think I heard you have a lot of companies like Stepping Stone, Cafe that have been with you and are with you. And I think I heard the secret. I'll share it at the end of the podcast why I think that's all working. It's kind of impressive and it excites me. But going back to early on, you started Portland Coffee Roasters '96. You were doing the roasting.
Yeah. No, it was two of us, so we had to do it. And I mean, I like equipment myself, so I'm it's one of those things where when I first got started, I really wanted to dive into how you do this, why you do it, what works, what doesn't work, and really understand the nuances of manufacturing. And that's why I like the coffee business a lot, is because it's a manufacturing process. You have to learn how to not over roast and have your product spoil and all these things, right? But I loved sitting there in front of a roaster. It's very kind of monotonous, but it was like you had to have a technique and you had to do it right every time, and you wanted to be consistent, because if you didn't, you'd burn a roast or something like that, you'd hear almost instant feedback. This isn't the same, and I learned very early, if we're as good as we can be, we'll never get that feedback. And I'll be honest, that's one of the key things that we've been successful at year over year is extremely consistent quality. And it may be that we've had relationships for 25 years for many growers, but it's the same way we want to train our staff and team to help us maintain that consistency, because that's what helps companies grow. People want to come back to something they like, and they want it to be consistent. Whether it's I'm roasting the coffee or a barista down the road or at some other stores creating that drink for them, it needs to be good every single time, or they're going to lose that business. And so we've taken that into not only roasting, but really throughout our the way we handle our customer service with all of our customers. Like if we're training anybody, it's be this consistent. Here's why, and this is what you'll gain from it.
So when it comes to roasting coffee, things have changed technologically. You get a lot of stuff's digital. You get a lot of feedback from computers and processors and heat. But when you were doing it, it was all old school. When you first started, there wasn't much of that. You kind of just had to.
Yeah.
It was your eye and your ear, right?
Yeah, early on drum roasting, typically it was your sight, smell. You can see what you're roasting. There's a glass, spyglass that can show you the color. There wasn't today. There's technology that can show you a roast curve, and you just follow it. And you have to adjust accordingly. And there's some that are all computer controlled, and those are great for consistency. But at the end of the day, if something's off at all, and you didn't train your roaster on how to with the sight and smell and feel, basically you're going to miss something and it's going to burn, or you may not see something, your controller's off. So we've always maintained that they need to understand as they're roasting our coffee is that they can see it before the computer tells them this is going to be done in a few seconds, even though it might be a little more. They literally have that dialed in now, and they do it every day, all day long. And that's what makes it challenging for people, because I tell everybody that the best coffee roaster is somebody who can replicate a recipe every day, maybe 20 recipes, because they're doing a bunch of different blends and whatnot. But they do it every day, and they do it because it's a challenge, and you're using technology to help them, but they're really doing it by sight and smell. And then on top of it, they can tear that roaster down in 30 days and clean it out from like they're taking care of a car at NASCAR. They basically can clean it, because at the end of the day, roasting is using fire to burn something. You don't want to burn your building down if you have poor quality cleaning plans in place. So, to me, that's what makes amazing roasters, is that they have this skill set of kind of a mechanic, but they would like to cook.
Just all the time I've been around really good craft brewers, there's just a lot of similarities, because, they're making the same beer when they make their flagship every time, and it's got to taste the same, but the grain's a little bit different every time, and the water's a little bit different, and the temperature, and there's these things where they're making adjustments to get the same flavor, and they're kind of fastidious about it, but there's also that kind of art as they're making those little adjustments. It just sounds to me like there's a lot of similarities between a good coffee roaster and a good brewer.
Yeah, I'd say as much as roasting is, making sure that the recipe is continued every day and it's consistent. It's our coffee bean buyer now. It used to be me for a long time. We've had a coffee buyer or our director of coffee for a long time. And over the years, we've always hired within and promoted people that really wanted to study what coffee tastes like. They're usually Q graders or quality control specialists. They can taste nuances in coffee before we buy it. And as they sample green coffee from all over the world, they can taste profiles. And we get offers every day. People are always wanting to sell us coffee because we're committed to our relationships. So essentially, they're looking every year what's changed from one season to the next. And coffee is just like any other agricultural product. It changes every year, but it's very minute. If you have the same type of coffee with the same varietal and the same terroir, maybe you had a little bit of a drought year, it may have a little bit of a change, but not much. And it's finding those gems, if you will, or diamond in the rough, that you can help over the years. That's what we've done really successfully.
So I want to come back to something, because I think people didn't realize you were serious. When you said tear apart a coffee roaster, the machine, every 30 days, you literally do that.
Yes, you have to, because coffee roasters collect oils and they're flammable, and if you don't do it, you'll burn down your building.
So you're literally taking them apart and cleaning them, a lot of janitorial work, and then putting them back together.
Correct.
Every 30 days.
Every 30 days. If not sooner. If it's all based on volume. So if you're really busy, it might be 25 days, or And if any roaster that's been around long enough knows that the risk of a fire in coffee is always there, because you're roasting to almost to the point where it's going to spontaneously combust. You're going up to 450 to 60 degrees, 480 for a French roast, and just past that is the thing can start on fire. So if you don't understand, it's like you're trying to control this fire to cook something without burning it. And at the same time, if you're, it's like the same principles of cooking. If you're working on a stove that's full of grease, you never clean it, you're gonna have a grease fire in your kitchen. That's the same exact principle in roasting coffee. If you don't have if your machine isn't detailed on a regular basis, it's a hazard, and we make sure we don't. It's part of our long-term planning, is that we we always have to have a backup. We always have to make sure that things are clean and have enough staff and people to do these things and not overwhelm one person when they need, when something has to happen.
Now, I know have been primarily a wholesaler and still are, but over time and, the past 5-10 years, you kind of had a little bit of diversity in your business. But pre-COVID, one of the backbones of your business, one of the significant things was, for example, convention business. People come to Portland on a convention, they'd end up somehow, some way drinking your coffee. COVID hits, that's all gone now. And two areas that you lean into a little bit more than when COVID hit is you did a little bit more grocery business, a little more selling to, grocery stores that could sell your stuff retail. And then you really leaned into the direct to consumer.
Yeah. So one thing that's made us strong over the last 25 years is that we're very diversified in who we sell to. We sell to pretty much every segment of the coffee business. We do, we have our own retail. We have lots and lots of wholesale, but within that wholesale, we sell to grocery, we sell to mom and pop coffee shops, we sell to universities, hospitals, large corporations. We sell direct to consumer. We're also selling, we sell to Burgerville an amazing coffee extract for their coffee shakes. They're just unbelievable. And it's just a small piece of our business, but because we do all of these things, we do well. It helps when something like COVID hits, and it helps you that you can pivot. We've been in the convention center for over 10 years. There's 2 retails in there. They've been shut down for over a year now, and probably will be through the summer. Hopefully they'll get back running again.
But you had to pick up that business somewhere else.
Exactly. So, we saw the shift. The shift went straight to grocery, and we were already in lots and lots of groceries in the Northwest, but also we're national grocery. We're in like 10 stores in New York City, to, chains in the Midwest, and in LA we're in 30-40 stores, and
you got 10 grocery store with roughly 10 stores in it in St. Louis, for example.
Exactly. And so those all of a sudden went from kind of an average sales to really booming, because that's where people went. They could still go to the grocery store to get their coffee, fix, if you will. And they were buying either online or they were buying at grocery, and most of them were buying at grocery. They were also now, Amazon just boomed again, and people buying direct from roasters picked up tremendously. But all of the coffee shops were down. They were down for 8 months almost. You couldn't go into them. Most people didn't want to go to a coffee shop or walk in the door. They were afraid of, and they should have been, because the opportunity we saw was, let's spend a little money, try to get more grocery, make sure we're distributing properly. None of our team were afraid of distribution. They took all the precautions. We were really lucky. We have such an amazing crew here. They took everything seriously. If somebody even went, thought they were sick, they stayed home. I mean, it was one of those things where we really managed it well, but really our staff managed it amazingly. They took it, like me and probably every other person at this point after a year of this. We're kind of tired of it, and you don't want to let your guard down. At the same time, our whole staff's fully vaccinated already here in our manufacturing place. We've made it mandatory. It didn't matter. Everybody wanted to get it done anyway. But for us, it was one of those, things that we were eligible a little bit earlier than I think because of food service or something.
Yep.
Yeah. So we made appointments for people really quickly, and they jumped on it. And the downside of it was we had a couple of weeks of really low staff because people got fatigued just from that for several days. Some people, the second shot was pretty tough, like everybody else. But to me, it's a simple kind of thing. Like, this goes back to understanding why we sell to so many different things when it comes to our business model. And when we saw that we were really barely selling to the consumer, because we value our wholesale business. We started investing this last year and creating systems to do more of that direct.
I like that. And just so people kind of get a sense of, of your business, there are coffee shops throughout the Northwest where you can go in, and it's a independently owned coffee shop, and they sell your beans. They sell your coffee. And then you've got grocery chains. A lot of people in the in the Northwest know about you because of Fred Meyer, Albertsons, Safeways, etc. But then you have chains here and there all across the United States that sell. So a question I have for you, and I think I know the answer, but I think it's good to hear it. You mentioned in the New York area, there's a chain, a supermarket chain, 10 stores, and they sell Portland coffee roaster coffee. Why? Why would those places in New York or St. Louis or California, why would they reach out to you guys?
Well, Portland's been kind of I'd say the main focus for specialty coffee, drip coffee in the U.S. for a long time. I always consider Seattle and Starbucks the latte capital, but Portland's been really focused on really good quality Arabica coffee sales and focused on the bean and talking about, where it's from and selling that. And it slowly went national I don't want to say from here, but we were a big part of it.
There's a reason there's coffee trade magazines located in Portland.
Right.
Not by happenstance.
Yeah. 3 of the 4 of the top coffee trade magazines are from Portland. One recently retired, but I mean, it's been a global hub for information. A lot of brands came out of Portland, and a lot of good brands and sold since then. But, I think people from New York or from any other city that they're looking for variety. And what we were told was that Portland, it fluctuates. Let me just say, Portland has had such a great run when it comes to food and beverages. Portland has such a great scene when it comes to coffee and micro beers and wine and now distilleries and tea, and we've taken craft beverages to another level that nobody's replicated anywhere in the world.
Well, not just craft beverages. There's some really good chocolatiers here. Yep. And I know it sounds weird to people, but one of the best places in the United States to get donuts is in Portland. We have a lot of really good donut makers here.
Well, and that goes back to the media here, right? So the media love the small guy. They love the underdog, if you will, and they promote them really well. And when you're small and you have some success and you get some good write-ups. I mean, I've seen local shops here get written up. USA Today, one of the top 10 coffee roasters, or one of the top 3 retailers, or whatever. Their business booms, and it's because people here like local. They like the local stories. They kind of value that, and that's what's made Portland such a great town for such a long time.
I love that. So one of the things you're just passionate about, and you have been because of your trip to Brazil years and years ago, is direct. Will you buy directly from the farmer? What are some of the countries that you do that kind of business with?
We just in Central America alone, we've bought direct from Costa Rica, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, Panama, and then we buy direct from Colombia, Brazil. We buy through a partner out of Peru. In Asia, we've been buying for almost 15 years from Papua New Guinea, Sumatra,
Tanzania.
It's Tanzania. In Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and we have a family farm in Tanzania. I never 25 years ago thought I'd ever be a part of a coffee farm, but we invested with somebody there 15 years ago to redevelop a big coffee farm, and it's been one of those amazing projects where you thought you knew it all in coffee until you started trying to grow it yourself. That's a whole nother world. I mean, it's just one of those things where
so in all those countries, there's an actual farmer that grows the beans, knowing that you're going to buy it, and they get a check, for lack of a better word, probably not a literal check, but they get funds from you for that. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, when you think about your daily coffee, especially with Arabica, really good coffee, it's all hand-picked still to this day, with the exception of Brazil, because you mechanically pick. But most of our coffee is I'd say 99% of it is hand-picked. And so there's not only a farmer that grows the coffee, they have to their local support is from all the neighboring towns or villages around those farms, or it's from a cooperative where it's a family business. It's maybe somebody has 4 acres. The average volume of land for a coffee grower in the world is less than 5 acres.
Wow.
So if you think about that, they're only producing 30 bags of coffee, maybe 20 bags of coffee at the most. That would be, and it's a couple $1,000s a year for income for somebody. But then they pool the resources, and it gets into a container, and then it gets to an importer, exporter. They never have representation. So in a lot of cases, if we're buying direct from like a cooperative, it's from maybe 1,000 families, because we're buying several containers, and we go to visit that cooperative. We do a project. We try to get involved. Our whole supply chain program, and it's kind of derived from my time at the Earth Summit, was, we wanted to have a lasting supply chain program. And that meant that when I buy direct, or when we buy direct, that we understand their hardships. What do they want to achieve out of this? It's not just price. We want to be involved. Like, what can we do to help? First project was a daycare in Costa Rica, because there was a lot of migrant pickers coming in from Nicaragua to Costa Rica to help pick their coffee. Well, while they're camping or staying in the houses, the kids need to do something. So we thought, well, they need to be educated, so let's just put a school up, And for the first 10 years, it was a daycare, and then it turned into a regular school, and then it went back to a daycare because the town actually created an actual school for migrant workers.
Okay, time out. I don't want people to miss this. I don't want people to miss this at all. I'll come back to something, but I spent, before I'm so blessed with what I get to do now, I spent 10 years in the banking world, 10 years in the nonprofit world. I have a real heart for what I call do-gooder stuff. And when you say your project was a daycare, this is you guys going down there to build a daycare out with funds. Like it's a donation. It's a nonprofit kind of activity.
Well, we didn't think of it that way. We thought of it as,
but you're not charging. You're not making money on the daycare.
Right. No, we just feel like when we get involved somewhere, like we're just finishing up a massive project. I mean, it's the biggest in 25 years in Colombia. It's a 4-year project. There's 168 farms we buy from. They all pool their coffee together, and we built a bathroom for every house in this area. It was like $200,000 worth of money. We had our whole supply chain involved, where we provided money. The person we're selling the coffee to provided money. Our exporter provided money and services. The Coffee Federation provided like logistical information, but the majority of it was bought through the contract. I added 18 cents a pound, and it paid for all this stuff, and there's a lot of coffee. And in return, we went down there. I took a customer down there, and we saw kind of what the impact has been. Right? We walked to this farm. It's like a 2 or 4 acre farm. They have 2 acres of coffee, some pigs, and they had, I think, a sugar cane. Very poor. They had never seen a farmer in 100 years. Like literally, we were the first we were the first coffee roasters to go into this place, because they had been at war for 60 or 70 years against the government. They were the rebels or the FARC or whatever they were. But they had never seen anybody. They had no representation outside of this, and so they never really met anybody. And we not only found great coffee through a good friend of ours, who actually the Costa Rica grower that I met. He was down there. He said, "God, you got to try this coffee. It's so good. They're so underrepresented. You guys could do so much good." Anyway, we went in there, tasted the coffee, started a program, and then I went about a year later, just because I wanted to make sure this was really doing what they were doing. And I was getting photos all along, but and then we just showed up, and it was just unbelievable.
And you're putting bathrooms. You're building people bathrooms.
Yeah, I mean, like a facility where they have a shower, clean water, septic system, laundry area, has a roof, basically a toilet, and before it may have had a hole in the ground, and it was with a shack around it. I mean, you could see the before, during, and after pictures, and it just finished. So we just finished after 4 years. We did this, and I'm not kidding you. In some cases, it was the nicest room in the house, and they were so grateful. And it was it's never the sexiest thing to think, oh, you built a bathroom, who cares, But the reality is they needed it. We did an assessment with the community, and they're like, well, we really don't have this, and they're not going to build it for us. This is the government, and we could use this type of support. And we listen to those things before we go in. We're not, it's like, hey, we're from America. We want to build you something you don't need. Here's a road or whatever. Something that has no benefit. And so that's what makes us different, is that we go in, we listen, we say, what's the opportunity for you? What's it for us? How can we both do well at this? And a lot of the time it's because they just sell their coffee to somebody in the middle, and they just get such low prices, and we take that away. We just say, we're going to pay you more because your coffee's worth it. We're also going to give you some money for a project, and we're going to have this person manage it. And then at the end of the day, if you like us, you'll sell it to us next year. We'll figure out another plan to do, like something else after that. We'll just keep this little, 10, 15, 20 cent premium in there for a project that makes life better for you.
And, some people, I would encourage people to imagine, and a lot of people may have a hard time, what it's like to not have a bathroom. I don't have to imagine. When I was young, my dad bought 160 acres between Lake Elsinore and Paris, California, up El Toro Road, about 9 miles of the road to get to the property. And we went up on a hill, and he put a 7x50 trailer on the piece of dirt. And there's no electricity, there's no running water, there's no power. It's still to this day blank on the map. And eventually, and we literally had a 5-gallon bucket when we first lived there. Then eventually he built an outhouse. So we had a cool outhouse. And I remember the day that he dug a stream, dug a well, and he got a pump and he put on a water tower, and we had running water and a toilet. That was life-changing for me. It was like, I don't have to go to the outhouse anymore. This is incredible. Didn't have to heat water on the stove to take a bath every Saturday night, whether we needed it or not. And had real showers. That was life-changing. So I totally get what a big deal a bathroom is.
Yeah, we probably one of the best projects I've ever been involved with. This is one of the ones that has been a very large project. But early on, I did a project with a friend of mine from New Guinea, and she I think, I want to say mistakenly, got into coffee, but she did it with her heart. She found some coffee. She was in the highlands in New Guinea. Her husband was an orthopedic surgeon, and he just donated his time every year, and he'd go there and travel for months and just loved helping people out. And he brought me back some coffee one day, and I said, well, this is really good coffee. Like, where'd you get this from? He said, well, we just invested in this farm in Papua New Guinea. I'm like, oh no, and so I'm like, well, what's it like? And he told me all about it and how they're building this hospital, they're doing a birthing clinic and all this stuff. And they were just pouring money into this place, and they had no business sense of what to do and how to do it. And so we started buying coffee, and I started telling all my friends in the business that, boy, here's a new origin that you have probably very little experience with, but this coffee is amazing. It's an estate business, and there's other coffees around there. You need to go to New Guinea. And of course, I didn't do anything. I was like, I'm not going there. It's a little dangerous. and so I sent one of my employees, and it was life-changing. I'm not kidding you. He came back. He changed his life completely. He just said, Mark, I know what I want to do with my life. He said, I want to get involved like you've been getting involved. I'm just going to do it on my own. And I'm like, I'm so happy for you. He left and did his own thing and started doing projects all over the place. He just fell in love with that part of the business. And so when he came back, we started talking with this group, and I said, well, what would be the biggest impact? And he said, well, honestly, they have a school that's made of thatch, so it's literally woven together, and they have 4 walls and a big storm that goes down all the time. Why don't we build a school? So it was this one tribe, and it was called the Kinjibi tribe, and they were, pretty rough group of people, to say the least. You don't want to be there around election time because it can be really rough. But we decided as a group, let's just do this. Let's build a school. It's 3 buildings, concrete. We'll figure out a price. And then, so I did this project. I kind of forgot about it for about 6 years. And I said, this is time to go. I want to see this thing. And I, just even forgot when I was going. I forgot I wanted to look at the building because we were buying from this farm, and it was really kind of interesting farm. And we had this great tour, and I've been buying for so long, and we really kind of helped this group out. And when you go on these trips, they treat you really well, and the food's amazing. They did a moo where they killed a pig and put it in the ground, and it was quite amazing. But almost near I was leaving, I said, I never saw the school. Can we go check it out? And the owner of the farm goes, boy, I haven't been over there for a long time. It's been pretty rough over there, but let's just go check it out. Let's get in the car and go. And we showed up, and of course, school was in session. And we walk in the door of the school, and there's math and science on the billboard or on the chalkboards, and the kids were learning. And at the same time, I looked at my friend, that's this doctor, and we just went like, "Oh my God, this is a total success!" Like, you don't see this, It's one of those things where you walked away from it saying that was like so unexpected. And then we, of course, we went up to we found the I don't know what they're called, maybe headmaster or the principal.
Principal equivalent.
Yeah. And he asked, are you Dr. Hull? And he said, yeah, we've never said thank you. So the whole village came out, and they were like, these are the guys that built the school. And it was really an awesome experience. And I happened to be with a couple of their coffee roasters. They were tagging along, and I was trying to show them how to get involved. And this is one of those things when you get involved, you see it, and they're just like, oh my God, Mark, this is incredible. And they started doing it. Like, this is 10 years ago. And, to this day, they're just like, they still tell about this story, like how we walked up there, and there's just like, we had no idea what to expect. So we showed them pictures of the original ones. We never even got pictures of the buildings finished until we saw it. And it was just like, well, it's one of those things where you you know you did the right thing by just providing 10 cents a pound above coffee prices. So that's the thing that when we tell these stories about what we do and why we still buy from this one area, it's because we're involved. And even our customers that don't use our brand name and they use their private label, they use these stories as their own. And that's what makes kind of our story unique, I guess. And it has made us unique for a long time.
You brought that story brought tears to my eyes. I just love stories of people making a difference like that. That's the best parts of my stories like that are from the best parts of my time in the nonprofit world, and that's just amazing. I want to circle back to so we talked about the projects, and those come out of your direct to consumer. You're directly drilling directly with farmers, buying directly from them in these various countries. Some of these people, you've been buying from them directly for 10, 15, 25 years. That's got to be really fulfilling but now they have kids and they have grandkids, and you've kind of helped them succeed.
Yeah, one of the stories I like to tell is Miguelina Villatoro. She's a grower from Guatemala, and when we started buying from her, this is another sad story, but we found her coffee because she submitted her coffee for a competition, and on the way to the competition, her daughter was raped and killed.
Oh,
yeah, just horrible. And she went missing, but it was actually on the way back. Sorry, and so her coffee got submitted. His family's devastated. They were literally going to shut down the farm and move back to Guatemala City. They were from 8 hours away in Huehuetenango, and because of that daughter, their coffee got put on the global coffee map. They were the top 15 of, like, I'm not kidding you, several 100,000 growers. And because of that, I was with my same friend from Costa Rica. We were out searching for coffees together. And he said, there's this one farm you might want to visit, Mark. And if I know you're right, you'll want to visit her. She's always been selling her coffee to somebody in the middle, making no money. She's got really good coffee and she cares. She was probably in her mid 50s at the time, and her 60s. She's getting up there. And we say, well, the only way to get there is by helicopter. And I was like, this is gonna be tough. And he's like, well, let's just find out if they can do this, right? So if we can land somewhere because it's pretty hilly. And so we set out to see about 3 or 4 farms, and she's the last farm of like a 2-week trek to try to find our supplier for Guatemala. And this so comical, but like we landed on the patio, it looked like a half of a basketball court with a helicopter. It's like you'd seen out of some crazy movie. People were lined up on fences, and of course the helicopter blades are like spinning around, and the dust is blowing everybody's faces, and they were so excited to see somebody. And of course there's this like person coming off of a helicopter. It was like it's comical to me, but I was laughing, and it was also like, man, these people better back up. Anyway, and she was telling me, we cut this tree down to see you. And I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to do that. It's this huge tree. I was like, well, the only way you could land.
They had to cut the tree down so a helicopter could land.
Yeah, like the least sustainable thing I ever did. So anyway, she takes me on a tour and tells me the story of her daughter. I didn't know this at the time, but I knew that her coffee was in this competition. Anyway, it's just tearful. It's just brutal story. But she's like, that's why you're here, and so it was that one point where I said, I'm going to buy your coffee no matter what. And I'm going to pay you really well. This was when the coffee market hit some crazy price of like 43 cents. In the term of things, it'd be like gas was a nickel, So she was making no money. We paid her $1.50 a pound, I think, at the time. And the market was, I could buy her coffee for probably 60 cents. And she's just like, why? And I said, because your coffee's worth it. It's really good. And we'll only get more and more money, and over the years you'll see, and this is over 20 years ago. Anyway, so every year she calls me and wishes my happy birthday to me and my mom or whatever. She's on Facebook and she's like connected to my family, and she literally she says, one of these days I'm going to take a trip and I'm going to see you. And we brought her to Portland a couple times and flew her in for a meet the grower type thing, and really taking care of her. I've got her connected with the Women in Coffee movement, sent her to India, sent her to Japan, and really got her involved in a global basis. And this woman has been literally, in this little town, has no global experience. And now she has this, she's like loved, beyond means, I guess. You look at people and she's just, oh, Miguelina, you know her, right? And I'm like, yeah, we were a sponsor. Anyway, so long story short, 20 some years later, I'm in Amsterdam and I'm at a show there. And I heard that maybe, she was thinking about doing a trip to Europe at some point. Anyway, she taps me on the back. I was at a coffee show, and I look around, and she gives me a huge hug, and she's like, Mark, I'm here with my granddaughter, and we're going to go to London, and then maybe on the way back to New York, and I'd love to come to Portland to see it. And I'm just thinking to myself, you've come a long way, and what a great partnership. And I said, and she just gives me a big hug, and I said, well, if you make it to New York, I'll fly you to Portland, and I have something for you. So she calls me in New York, and her daughter's like, she's just going into college. Her daughter was the first college person, person in her family to make it to college in Guatemala. And anyway, she says, yeah, we're going to come to Portland to see you. So it just so happened that one of the local distilleries here, East Side, has started a product called Huehue, the coffee rum, and it's her coffee. And it has El Patronel on it. And I said, hey, I got something for you. Come and see this thing. And I gave her a bottle, and she just lost it. She's like, oh, my God. I'm like this and that. And, rum is big in Central America. Anyway, she's just like, I can't believe my name's on a bottle of rum. And it's like, she just looks back at the history of all of what we've done. It's like, it's kind of one of those things you feel the super pride when you see that happen to somebody. And you don't really see it happening, but you see the consequences of some actions like that happened 20-some years ago because somebody knew me well enough to know you got to visit this lady. And then I've known the success of her farm over the years, and we make a point never to buy all of somebody's coffee. We say, you got to sell to other people. If something happens to me, I want you to be stable. If something happens, you got to be able to find somebody to buy your coffee. So she's done it's one of those things. She's done a great job. Her son's taken over. Actually, her granddaughter will probably someday take over because she wants to do it. She thinks coffee's amazing. She's got to travel the world with coffee.
And tell me her name again.
Miguelina Villatoro.
And she obviously had more than one child.
Yes,
she had a couple. She had a couple daughters. She had a son, and speaking from my heart, the fact that you helped her overcome what is, in my opinion, the greatest tragedy that anyone can go through. When you are married and you lose your spouse, you're a widower. And when you are a child and you lose your parents, you're an orphan. But when you're a parent and you lose your child, it's such a tragic thing. We have no name for it. We don't even name what that is. And I can tell you firsthand, there is nothing worse than losing a child. And for you to help her heal from that, wow, what a hell of a story, man. I just love how you do business. I loved your coffee. I just loved how it tasted. And I'm a fan for life. I'm just so grateful for the work you're doing to make a difference in the world. Selling great coffee is fantastic, but then making a difference in the world. I teach people a good, better, best lifestyle, and part of a good life to me is making a difference, and part of the best life is when you leave a legacy. And wow, what a legacy you are leaving! It just really touches my heart. Cheers to you! Thank you so much for that. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
And I know that's not why you do it, and I know I'm making you uncomfortable, but it's absolutely fantastic. All right, before I burst into tears, if someone wants to get into coffee as a career, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I think they have to understand what they think they want to do with coffee, because coffee is a lot different than it was when I started, and it's probably a lot different than when people like Boyd started. I mean, everything is evolving; it's always evolving, and the coffee industry in itself there's just so much to it. If you want to be able to have a brand, I think you need to understand you need to have a retail. When I first started, you could have a brand as a wholesale person, as a wholesale company without retail. That's completely changed since I started. That's why we started some retails, is to make sure our brand was seen in the public spaces, and that's why we had cafes at the convention center, the airport, and some other things. But I'd say the best advice is to understand really what you want out of coffee. If you want to feel like you want to have a manufacturing business, open up a roaster retailer with the intent to try to do wholesale. It's really tough. There's a lot of competition, but at the end of the day, if you create a good brand and you have a good marketing plan, you can do it. If you really love serving people and you like the retail experience and you have the right business model, like today, the perfect business model for a coffee retail is something with a drive-through, something with outdoor seating, and some indoor seating. Because we don't know how long this is going to last, right? So,
Yep.
so
Or if another one's coming.
yeah, and they're expecting more, right? So the point is that think about what is the unexpected and how to mitigate that through what you want to do. And some people say, I want to get into coffee because I want to, like something like what I do is really get involved in places or people. You can do that without being in coffee. You can do that as trying to get a job with an importer or work with a large multinational nonprofit that does the work, and go learn and study and work overseas in coffee growing regions. There's so many facets to the business that you really have to understand what you like. And sometimes the best way to do it is to go work for somebody, see what areas of the business you like. If somebody has a wholesale with a roaster, start there and understand what maybe their customers like, what the business is like. And I can tell you without question, if you're starting up and you have the resources to do something with multifaceted opportunity for retail, with wholesale, it's not inexpensive, and and there's so much competition. But if you have a good story, you're good at service, you'll probably do fine.
So I think that's brilliant advice for people wanting to get a career in coffee. I think that you have been able to, retaining employees is always a challenge. And part of the reason you're able to retain employees, and there's turnover at every company, but is because they get to be involved. You make sure they know the stories of the projects you're doing, and that just got to be fulfilling. Like, we're part of something bigger than just my job. Part of the reason that you keep your retail customers, and loyalty is an important thing, is part of it is honestly, you just have great coffee. It just tastes really good. But then they get that bigger sense of it. And I think part of the reason that you're able to keep your customers that buy from you wholesale, whether it's the grocery stores or the retailers, is because you are truly, sincerely, you actually want to help them succeed. And you try to figure out what they need, what's trying to do, and help them succeed. And that's that's easy to say, but you actually do it.
Yeah, I think that even when an employee comes to me and says, I'm really interested in this, like I really want to learn something different. I'm here now, but I see something I'd like to try. They have the opportunity to talk to their other managers and say, can he try this? Let's maybe gear up for him, this person or that person to learn a different facet of it. If they're really active in a project, or they see, boy, I have family here, somebody has a connection with somebody or something along whatever the project is. We in the past we've done things because we have a nonprofit, or not the company does, but I have a nonprofit called Portland Global Initiatives, and we did events like Walk for Water or the pub crawls and ways to raise money. And people would be, if they were active with that, I would see it as a way that I want to make sure that they get to go somewhere and see something and maybe contribute. And so they would say, I want to help with this walk, but point is, I'd love to do a project. And I'd say, well, let's figure out a way for you can help raise money, and it'll pay for you to go somewhere and do a project. And we did this for years and years and years. And obviously the last couple of years, or last year or so, we didn't do it for the last couple of years just because they couldn't do it. But even today, like I lost a 14-year Portland interesting person that was part of our marketing team. Super smart kid. When he left, it's one of those things where I was so happy for him. Not that he left me, but he started his own company, and he gave me a nice note. Obviously, that he learned some things from us. He was there for a long time. He did everything. He was a jack of all trades, and he discovered something while we're doing some research for us, that he's going to do well at. And it's those types of things. And there's many people that left Portland Coffee Roasters and started other companies, other coffee companies, and from Miami, Florida to Southern, there's probably 15 their new coffee roasters out there because of us. And that's fine. I think I'm happy for them. I honestly, I'm genuinely happy for them.
And you have the same to your customers, your wholesale and retail customers. You want them to succeed just as well. I mean, that really is for real on your heart. That's a big deal to you.
Well, what's important is that if we're doing our job right, their customers are going to come back, and they're going to grow their business. They're going to keep doing something, consistent and grow their business because of the consistency. And in the end, people are kind of the same. They want to do something better and more and grow, and we like to be a part of that. To be honest, we see a lot of our private labels that start with one bag, and next thing you know, they're $1 million. I mean, it's one of those things that we think we do really well. We can help somebody grow because of who we are and what we care for, right?
So, Mark, it's been great to have you on the podcast. If people go to Culinary Treasure Podcast, www.culinarytreasurepodcast.com, this podcast has its own website, and there'll be a link with your where people listen to the podcast on the website, but I'll have in your article, there'll be links where people can go to your website and they can read about your projects. They can follow Portland Coffee Roasters on Facebook and Instagram, etc. I'll put a link for Portland Global Initiatives, put it right there at the top so people can find it really easily. And the Culinary Treasure Podcast is part of the Culinary Treasure Network. One of the fun things we do now is shows. As you know, we did the first episode of Your Next Craving was your holiday roast from last year, which was just phenomenal. So maybe next year, see, this is 2020, maybe 2022, you take a project trip, man. I'd love to tag along and film that and tell that from the, from the story side of that project and catch some video about it. Cause that's right up my alley. That's right in line with my heart. And it'd be fun to help tell those stories with some video. But anyways, it's been phenomenal to have you. I was a fan before. I'm a fan even more now. Again, thank you so much for great coffee and thank you for all that you. It's been just a delight to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right, cheers.